Welcome back, Hour 2 of Doug Pagitt Radio, the April 3rd edition. And as you know, if you're familiar with the regular rhythm of our program, that in the second hour we like to have an interview with newsmakers, authors, people that are thinking interesting things and are setting an agenda for how those of us who want religion to be public in a more helpful way in the world, the way that they contribute to that. And so I'm so thrilled today to be able to do an interview with Eugene Peterson. He's the author of a new memoir called The Pastor. And Eugene has had a full life full of so many things. So in our conversation today, there's many things we want to talk about. But Eugene, thanks so much for being on the program.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
And you're at home, and home for you is now in Montana. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And how is life in Montana today?
Well, it's very nice. It's raining, but weather never bothers us in Montana. We're used to that.
That's right. It's beautiful all the time. Well, I'm joined here in the studio by the sidekick on the program, John Musick.
Thank you, Pastor Peterson.
Hello.
Yeah, well, we're so glad to have you on, and for this book. This is the newest book that I'm sure someday you will be most famous for. But there's people who know you as being the author of the translation of the Bible called The Message, and so I wanted to make that connection for people. And I wanted to chat a little bit about that as well as the Pastor book, because I think that for many people, their interest in someone who was able to write a translation of the Bible that allowed the Bible to come to life and sort of sing inside of their own experience is something that makes your whole story of your life as a pastor and as a theologian and as a person of faith yourself interesting. Can we talk a little bit about the message and the process that you went through in doing a translation of the entire Bible?
Sure. Where do you want me to start?
Well, how did you? And we won't spend a lot of time on this, but I haven't asked you this when we've been together before, and I wanted to ask. How did you start that project, and how long did it take for you to work up the gumption to say maybe Eugene Peterson should put together a translation of the Bible that other people could read?
Well, it wasn't my idea, to tell you the truth.
Oh yeah.
But as I was doing it, I realized I've been doing this all my life, so it really wasn't. I started out as a professor in teaching Greek and Hebrew, so I had the languages down pretty well. But I became a pastor, and I was just trying always to get this language, the way I read it in the original languages, into the language of my people. And some of these things were published in little articles or poems or whatever. And a publisher just one day wrote to me and said, "Why don't you do the whole Bible?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I can't do that. I'm a pastor.
Right.
I just do this kind of an off time."
Yeah.
But they kept after me, and at one point I thought, maybe this is maybe my work for now. And when I did it, it took me probably 6 or 8 months before I felt comfortable to agree to it and go ahead with it.
Yeah, because for a lot of us as pastors, we just would it'd be a big goal to read the entire Bible in a year. Right? The thought of being able to think about it with the depth that you did and try to say it again in a language that would ring for people was quite an accomplishment. Was there anything odd to you about, like, did you feel a sense of an ominous kind of responsibility?
I don't think so. I think I felt a kind of blessing, a feeling. I've been doing this all my life, and I just didn't know that it would come to something like this. One of the things that always struck me as a pastor is that the Bible was written in the language of the people. Mm-hmm. And all the translations that we have stemming from the King James, people don't talk that way anymore.
Right.
So I was trying to get this back into the language of the Hebrew language, the Greek language in which it originated. So, no, it was kind of a sense of excitement. It came alive in ways which were refreshing to me. Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm sure you've been asked more times than you want to about that whole process of the message, so I won't stand there too long. But I do want to ask you this one: was there one part of the Bible, when you were translating it into a contemporary a voice, that was the most difficult for you to do?
my. No, I don't. Job is the most difficult Hebrew.
Oh, yeah.
But there are a lot of places that are just a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the feeling I was entering into the poetry of Job
Mm-hmm.
in ways which let me understand it in ways and see, I'm a pastor, so you're dealing with suffering all the time.
Oh, yeah. Right, right.
And to be able to write, to translate that in a way which was not condescending or not fixing, or and I think maybe I've received more positive comment on the Job translation than anything else from people who suffered. That they felt like I'd entered into their world and their life. So that's gratifying.
Oh, that's excellent. Now, if you were around my house, if somebody were to come to my house and grab a Bible that's sitting out, they would find the Message, or if you saw my iPhone, what translation comes up when I open it up, it's very often the Message. What about for you? Do you keep the Message around your place when you're reading through the Bible? Do you read?
No, I don't.
You don't. Does it feel
I
funny
read it
for
mostly.
you? Yeah.
I read it mostly in Hebrew and Greek.
Oh, well, see.
Well, okay.
Yeah. If you couldn't read it in mostly Hebrew and Greek, would you read the Message? Make me feel better.
Hey.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that really great gift, and for just allowing what was going on in you to be shared publicly with the rest of us.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, did you receive any pushback or flack for messing with the scriptures and reinterpreting it? Was there any negativity? Did you feel from that?
Not personally. I don't use the internet. Friends tell me that there was a lot on the internet that was very negative, and my publisher didn't bother me with that. He protected me.
Mm-hmm.
So no, really. Sometimes I get letters from people, and I always answered them courteously. Most of them were friendly, just wanted to know why I did something. But no, when J.B. Phillips did his vernacular translation back in the 40s, he was just battered by the people in England.
Mm-hmm.
And and he had a very frail emotional life, and it put him into a depression which lasted for years.
Mm.
And so I thought, oh my, this is going to happen to me, but it didn't. And Kenneth Taylor, who did the Living Bible, he got death threats.
Oh my goodness!
And so I thought, when this came out, I thought maybe we should just go to Samoa for 3 years and hide out.
But you chose Montana.
Those two guys, men, pastors, they paved the way, and by the time I came along, it was accepted to do this. So I think I was just fortunate that way.
Well, and again, thank you for it. And your new book is called The Pastor, a Memoir. And so for maybe a lot of people, they aren't familiar that you see yourself in your own understanding of who you are and how you do your work and the other writings you've done, or your teaching, or your work with the Message, that you see yourself as a pastor. And that
yes.
in some ways, I mean, what I was picking up from the book is that there's a sense in which the way you think about being a pastor is perhaps a lost art in the world in which we live. Was that part of the reason why you wanted to tell your story of being a pastor in a memoir fashion?
Yes, that wasn't I didn't have that as a goal, but as I was doing it, I thought, I'd really like to give dignity to this role that's so dismissed by much of modern culture.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think something happened quite early. I always knew I was a writer. That was always incorporated in whatever else I was doing. But I was sitting in an airplane once, and a man asked me what I did.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm a writer. And immediately I just felt this sense of guilt. I'm a pastor.
Huh.
But pastors don't carry the same kind of dignity in our culture that writers do. So I cheated.
Yes.
And that stuck with me. I'm never going to do that again.
It didn't sound right to you.
It didn't. It was dishonest.
And so in this book, you tell that story of growing up in a religious environment where pastors for you wasn't a highly esteemed role. So it's not that you had an experience of a pastor in your life that was meaningful or that you were trying to emulate. The way I read the book is there was a sense that this was something that was becoming within you with every step that you were taking in your life. That you weren't trying to emulate someone else. That you were trying to figure out what does it mean for you to be a pastor.
That's true. Growing up, I never had pastors that I admired. I liked them, but they never seemed to be serious about God.
Wow.
And they came to our little Montana valley and hunted and fished mostly. And they were great storytellers, and they were great to be around. But I was taking from quite an early age my Christian identity seriously. And I just never found much congruence between what they were doing and what I was doing.
Well,
until I became an adult. Then I was about in my mid-20s. Things started coming together.
Well, hold that thought, would you, Eugene? We'll come back and we'll talk about this in a minute here after the break, because around this station we still got to find a way to pay the bills. So we'll be back here with Eugene Peterson, who's going to tell us a story about his book, The Pastor, published by Harper One. You can pick it up everywhere they sell books. We'll be back here with Eugene Peterson on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and DougPagittRadio.com.